want to just give up, don't. Don't let anyone beat you. Hello, today is November 27, 2017, and the time is 11:04 a.m. I just wanted to do a random video to talk about a few things quickly. This is my second take doing this video. I was almost finished and some thoughts, and some random person decided to stand beside my vehicle. Anyway, it threw me all off, so thought I'd start fresh. What's inspired this video is embarrassment. Embarrassment of what I've been dealing with for almost 5 years. 5 years, actually. Not an embarrassment of guilt or anything, but just the embarrassment of having to go through all this. The embarrassment of being accused. The embarrassment of spending many years listening to this false narrative before open court, before I had an opportunity to say anything. People just, listening on cases or whatever. And I wanted so much to say, this is scream loudly and say, none of this is true. Here's evidence. I never had that opportunity. Just because someone's embarrassed doesn't mean that they're guilty. And I'm understanding how innocent victims can feel embarrassed and ashamed for being an innocent victim. It's been hard. I remember in 2013 telling people I felt embarrassed. And probably at that time they thought you're embarrassed because you're guilty. No, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing when you're in a social gathering or you meet somebody, and one of the most common questions is, what do you do? And you tell, what do you tell people in my situation without opening the Pandora's box? Sometimes, depending on the situation, and there's an opportunity and they're wanting to know, I tell them a bit about what I'm going through, and if they ask questions, I tell them a bit more. And it's embarrassing. And people don't understand, and most people, they just don't get it. It's bigger than them. They don't understand. They have this belief that law is about truth and justice, and it's not. And yeah, a lot of people don't know what to say or how to handle it. It's embarrassing. It's not so much about pride being major factor, possibly a micro factor, but and over the years it hasn't been easy to listen to this whole false narrative. And not having an opportunity to say much. And anyone listening in open court, I remember when the first officer testified, and he said that while they didn't start investigating me, or they weren't made aware of any possible sexual crimes, allegations, and for several weeks after, the event that almost cost me my life, because they wanted to do street justice. Which contradicts what he said before, that I was charged that night for sexual crimes or whatever. And not even being able to say exactly what or anything. And so there's an example of them contradicting themselves, and then they contradicted each other and contradicted both incomplete disclosure packages. But what's interesting about the officer saying, oh, it was several weeks later, they recorded themselves on my pen recorder, and it's date and time stamped automatically when you plug it into a computer. And you can hear them talking about wanting to investigate me. And I'm not going to disclose everything that they were talking about, but investigating me for these sexual crimes and stuff. So I have the first officer contradicting his own testimony the first time, as well as the second time he testified. And then I have video evidence, which I ended up getting back from the police because they confiscated everything of mine. And I got the recording back. But to have to listen to that in open court, the public, whoever was sitting there, it's embarrassing. And not because there's any truth to it. And I remember the 15 months later when the trial resumed, between the officers' testimonies, the second officer, during one of the recesses, went to the front of the courtroom, pulled up a chair, grabbed the Bible that he swore on, that everyone swears on, and sat there with this really angry, superior facial expression as he's flipping through the Bible. I'm not saying that any other religion or any other belief system is better or anything, but it's interesting how him being a Christian, based on his actions, with his moral supremacy, sat there showboating, knowing that he did it right in front of me, and I couldn't leave the prisoner's box. Just shows your typical Christian hypocrisy. And it's not just them, it's other religions too. But they're just people. They come from the same gene pool as the rest of us. And that's just not with police, it's government, any profession. Just people. And if most of the gene pool is dysfunctional, mentally inferior, genetically whatever, makes sense why the majority in these positions are the same. No amount of training or education fixes that. There's people with PhDs which are idiots. There's people with no education who are brilliant. You add the whole social justice snowflake mindset of equal outcome rather than equal opportunity, and while we've just increased the odds of having idiots in these positions. Are all of them idiots? No. But because of them, innocent people, not just me, have to deal with an embarrassment. The first 3 months of this year, 16 officers in this city committed suicide. And I learned this from inside sources. Never hit the media. They don't want it to go in the media because they're afraid that a lot of people would be pleased by the news, as well as, they want to protect the family's privacy and all that. But they're just people. And actually, during my trial, when I did my closing summations, and if anyone's wondering what the hell I'm talking about, I ask you to go look at my other videos, which tells my story. There's short videos, long videos. I'm not going to reiterate it every time I do a video, but during the trial, I used a newspaper article as part of my evidence when I was making my arguments. There was an officer who committed suicide. And I did it respectfully, and there was no ill intent. And how it worked into my arguments was another example that I was using, that they're just people. And one of the statements that some other officer made to the newspaper was that police officers are just as frail and whatever as anyone else. Working in the mental health field, you see people who, for example, are born with some sort of mental defect, people with brain damage, people who've been traumatized, etc. And one of the common traits with these people is the fact that they need routine, they need to be regimented, they need consistency. There's no gray area, it's black or white. You can't deviate. If you deviate, they get upset. Extreme cases, they become angry, violent, whatever. Rules have to be followed. If you tell them this is a rule, they will hold you to that. And when you think about a lot of people in society, same thing. Well, that's the law. Well, there's also a thing called common sense, but it's like people have lost common sense. And people divert responsibility of having the ability to resolve their own problems or issues with other people, which is part of the dumbing down process. You compile that to running the risk of being civilly liable or criminally liable for resolving matters yourself. I'm not even talking about has to be a physical confrontation. It could just be, somebody saying, well, I felt threatened, they came to my door. Today that can get you charged for something because of this whole social justice snowflake nonsense. So people's rights and abilities have been taken away to handle things themselves, which diverts responsibility to police. And when people call and say, oh, I have this problem, this is why there's a thing called discretion with police to lay charges and do stuff. This is why when you call them, they prioritize their calls. If they're not busy and they're bored, yeah, it's job security for them. As long as they got shit to do, then great. So yeah, it's to their benefit. But it's harming society. And then you add, in Canada, police having their own private social media of CPIC and their own internal communications and stuff when they get upset with somebody or pissed off or whatever. It's creating more work for them, plus the person is getting their revenge or whatever it is they want to accomplish by doing so. And there's a big problem with CPIC. In fact, I started a petition hopefully to get enough supporters to raise awareness that there's a problem with CPIC here in Canada. It's a big problem. And I don't want to be having to deal with this. I'm sick and tired of dealing with all this. I just want to live a normal life, get a good job, but with a criminal record now, I can't get a job reflecting my education or career history. I can't get a labor kind of job, which would be hard to do, which was hard to do actually, looking back, because my people in a labor job look at my career history and they're like, you don't belong here, and they know if I did get a job, I'd be looking for something else. But I'm physically disabled now because of 2 officers, which leads me back to embarrassment. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for now. Again, I would like to thank everyone who has showed their support in various different ways. And I want to say to other people who may be facing their own trials and tribulations in their lives to be strong. Life is about survival. Don't give up. Push. There's no luxury with survival. And if you're watching this and whatever's going on in your life, you want to just give up, don't let anyone beat you. You're better than that. Please like and subscribe. You can find me on Facebook, and we'll see you next time.